I can't do 143 because I'm not a regular person.
Silento has been getting into some absolutely crazy trouble for someone who's had such a whimsical career. Richard Lamar Hawk, better known as Silento, was most famous for Watch Me, Whip, Nae Nae, but that might not be the thing he goes down in popular imagination for. He hasn't been in the news for a while, but that's changed recently. On February 1st of 2021, Silento was arrested for the charges of murdering his own cousin. So what drove Silento to such a brutal crime? Could there be any other way to look at the situation? What does the future hold for him? These are all questions we're going to be looking at today, right here on Rizzle. On the night of January 21st, police were called about a series of shots that were heard ringing out in DeKalb County. When they got there, it was confirmed that Silento's cousin sustained injuries from 8 different gunshots. Frederick Rooks died on the scene, and CCTV footage nearby showed at least one of the shots happened on camera when reviewed later. The shooting actually took place right in front of Rooks' house. The police department involved with the investigation announced that while it took them a minute to figure out what was happening, they were committed to the idea that Silento was the one who shot Frederick Rooks. A statement from the DeKalb County Police Department said, DKPD detectives identified Hawk as Rooks' cousin and the person responsible for Rooks' murder. Investigators are still working to uncover the motive for the shooting. While the whole thing comes as a shock, it's not the first time Silento has found himself in trouble with the law. Back in 2020, he was arrested for injuring his girlfriend but was released the next day. That very day, after being released, he was picked up again because he had walked into a random house with a hatchet looking for his girlfriend once again. He was arrested again in 2020 after being pulled over on the highway. Officers accused him of speeding and reckless driving, with their radar clocking him at 143 miles per hour. Silento got out and tried to argue with the cops and claimed that the reason for his speeding was that he was being followed by fans after the show. He said there are always 10 or 15 cars full of fans following him after he performs. When asked if he thought it was okay to drive that fast, he said yes, because he isn't a normal person.
If it's like 10 cars following me, I can't do 143 because I'm not a regular person. And you can go look.
Apparently, he thought being famous made him immune to the law. But Silento's life is much darker than people might think. On a show called The Doctors, Silento revealed that he had been born with several different substances in his system. He had more than just alcohol or anything like that in his system, and confirmed that he was born having been exposed to a few different types of the hard stuff. This is just another thing that contributed to Silento's bad situation during childhood. He also had a really rough home life as a kid that would come to affect him later on in life. He saw his parents physically fighting and just generally grew up in a bad place. He also admitted that he has been struggling with depression for basically as long as he can remember. When he was 14, he finally got out of that bad environment and moved in with his great aunt. It wasn't all just magically fixed after that though. He had to go to a school where he didn't know anyone, and he had to leave his old life behind. Silento was also prescribed ADHD medicine and sleeping pills while he was at his new school. No matter how much Silento tried to chase the success of Watch Me, it never really played out that way. He didn't put out another project until 2018 with the album Fresh Outta High School, even though he was 21 at the time. It was followed up by 2 more albums called Fresh Outta High School 2 and Skyrolex, but neither of the albums really made waves on the charts or with fans. Back in early 2020, Silento also took to Instagram to start asking fans for money over the internet for selfies, shoutouts, and videos, which made fans think that maybe Silento was struggling with more than just his mental health. His albums weren't selling enough to be able to support the lifestyle he had while he was blowing up, and it's likely that this only made his depression worse. With all these charges being leveled at Silento, are we really surprised about what happened? I mean, the dude showed himself time and time again to be seriously struggling with his mental health, which means that it was only a matter of time before things got worse for the young rapper. It's also not like all mentally ill people do things like this, but that isn't what this is about. But after the whole thing with his girlfriend, it's obvious that bro should just get some help. If he had gotten help earlier, maybe his cousin, Frederick Rooks, would still be alive today. Now Silento is being held in prison without bond. Since the judge thought he was too violent to be allowed to run the streets, not only was Silento deemed mentally unstable, but he also has a history of refusing to take the meds that were prescribed to him for bipolar disorder. Silento's lawyers admitted that he's been struggling with his mental health, but also tried to say that since Silento was part of a campaign to convince kids to say no to drugs, he should be allowed out. The jury said no, and now he's stuck in lockup. A big part of the reason that Silento wasn't able to get out on bond after the recent incident of his cousin is that he was actually in the middle of still being released on bond for the 2 previous charges. He had paid a total of $108,000 to get released in the first place, and throwing on more and more charges when you're already being investigated wasn't really the move if Silento wanted a taste of freedom. Silento's future is pretty bleak. When it's all said and done, dude has been indicted on 4 different charges, and they're all pretty heavy. While we'll have to wait until the trial to really know what Silento's fate is, we have a couple of guesses. Best case scenario for him, he gets off. That's very unlikely. He has a total of 6 charges pending, all of which add up to put Silento away for life. The team has been just what his name implies, silent. The team, other than a statement we'll mention in just one moment, hasn't said anything either. Silento isn't bragging about how he's going to beat the cases like YNW Melly, for example, which might be best for him. All we can really do is wait. His publicist has made a statement on the whole thing, trying to drum up support for the rapper, saying, "Please send my client Silento some positive vibrations. Over the last several years, Ricky has been suffering immensely from a series of mental health illness." The publicist goes on to say, "Ricky is a beautiful soul, and we hope that the same people who came up whipping and Nae Naeing with him continue to support him and lift him in prayer." We're not gonna lie here. The whole thing comes off as being just a little weird. It's way too positive to be talking about someone who's on trial for murder. Like, how are you about to bring up Whip and Nae Nae during something like that? We're sure Silento is having a rough time right now, but shouldn't we be focusing on the family of the victim? At this point, no one in the family, Silento's team, or Silento himself have reached out to anyone to make comments about the motive, how things really went down, or about the future. The only thing we have is an album released by Silento in March of 2021 called Bars Behind Bars. There aren't many answers here either though. A few theories are floating around, and some are pretty convincing. Some people think that Silento just snapped one day after things got too heavy for his mind to handle. Other people think that he was on hard times financially before he decided that he was going to rob his cousin. After things didn't go as planned, Silento had to start popping off shots. There are a couple of different tragedies going on here. Of course, the death of Frederick Rooks is one of those. May he rest in peace. But there's more going on. Silento was just 17 when Watch Me dropped, and he went from being a kid to one of the rappers with the most buzz in the game at the time. The dude's got a video in the top 80 viewed on YouTube. After he blew up, Silento struggled to match the success of that first hit single. And with the depression he was already suffering from, it's likely that he only spiraled further and further before he reached a breaking point. His life had fallen apart, and he lost everything that fame had promised him when he was just in high school. He didn't reach out, he didn't get help, he got thrown in jail, and he didn't take care of his mental health. The people around him should have made sure that he was good. The fact that all this happened while he was doing his best to plan his major comeback means that we can't just sit here and cap like a big part of the crime wasn't caused by the pressures of the music industry. But of course, that in no way means Silento isn't responsible for his own actions. Mental health issues can explain things like this, but they don't justify them. What do y'all think though? Does Silento act alone? Is it all because his mental health is to blame, or is there something else going on here? Let us know what you think down in the comments, and don't be afraid to leave a like if you enjoyed the video. Also, be sure to ring the bell down below to subscribe and get more rap news sent directly into your feed. As always, have a great rest of your day, and don't forget to keep it Rizzle.